Hi everyone, welcome to the final weekend of the film festival, and this is a very special event to go out with a bang. Not only do we have the full 5 hours of maybe this year's most anticipated TV series, but we also are happy to be joined by the stars and director of Copenhagen Cowboy. Please give a warm hand to actors Angela Bundalovic, Lola Korfiksen, and the creator behind this series we're about to see, Mr. Nicolas Winding Refn. This marks sort of a homecoming for you, Nicolas, since it's your first production in Denmark in 15 years or so. I know directors don't usually like to talk that much before screening, but if you had to place this series on a scale between, say, Pusher and Only God Forgives, where would you place it in terms of vibes and style?
I'm not a politician. You make what you want to make the way you want to make it. And that's the only really thing you can do. Obviously, there are certain components that repeat themselves through your work. And that's natural. But you can maybe look at it more like it's an extension of an aesthetic that I started with when Mads Mikkelsen and I made Valhalla Rising, and Ryan and I, Gosling, made Drive, and so forth. It's a certain sense of a hero that I kind of use as my alter ego, and I felt that now it was time to resurrect that character, but this time as a woman, and that was kind of the origin of the idea.
Just to check, how many in here have seen a full TV series in a cinema before? There's one guy. Which series was it?
The Kingdom.
Kingdom. Would you say this is like the ideal setting to see this in the full length on big screen?
I think that the evolution of technology has opened up a lot of opportunities of what content is and the existence of content. I certainly make things in the idea of viewing it, but it doesn't have to be in one go. It can be also in pieces. It can be dissected. It can be, you can look at it now and maybe 2 years later, or now and a week later, or now back to back. I think that there's a whole more democratic ideology of what is content. And as long as content is personal and an experience, then it will always resonate as music.
Would you call it a TV series, or is it in fact a really long movie? I know you mentioned those terms with your last TV series.
Well, I think television series is a very dated word because no one really watches television. Certainly I don't watch television, and I don't believe they do, and they're younger than me. Streaming has changed our whole idea of what content means, and television in the old format doesn't really resonate anymore the same way. It's just content now, and content is like almost, because of the digital revolution, content coexists with our physicality. So you can log on anywhere 24 hours a day and access content. That whole ideology has changed the perspective of what the meaning of content is and how content actually works. It also changed the idea of what is success, what is failure in content, what's the financial ecosystem that we were dependent on for so many years. It's always, has crumbled and is now becoming reimagined of what the future is going to be. So I think I more look at this as just a creative experience, and it goes back to the origin of creativity. It's you go to an experience to have an experience, and watching it in a beautiful cinema like this is one way of doing it. You can also watch it on your iPhone, which I a lot of times do, or you can watch it, on a giant television. But it's all about the personal viewing and the relationship between you and the experience.
Angela, I know Or I read that your character is quite the silent type, like a Western-style hero. Is that true? And could you talk a little bit about your character and how you approached her?
It's on.
Yep.
She is very silent, yeah. But I think there are many ways to communicate, and I think to work with Nicolas, who also really knows how much the body can communicate, and how much the movements and just the gaze and thoughts and emotions you send out, like vibrations. So there was definitely a lot to work with physicality because there weren't words as much. So how to find into her was also very much through the physicalness and through getting to know her really well in the beginning, where I was brought in quite, like, I was brought in the process of how she was being made, not from the very beginning, but from quite before we started shooting, where Nicolas invited me to discuss things with him and with the writers, and so it could like grow within you for a while before you actually start shooting.
Lola, I know you said you're quite a talkative person. Was the biggest challenge for you here to sort of adapt to the stillness of this piece, or was it being directed by your dad?
Well, I think it's always a challenge working with someone that you're very close with. In my experience, it was my dad. But I think for me, my dad is a very quiet person. When he's at home, he doesn't really talk to anyone at all. So you know, I knew how important the stillness and the body language and the eyes were to this, and I think I really practiced. I used to be a dancer as well, so I think that also came a little bit natural, but it was a challenge, a little bit, I would say.
A question to both of you actors. Do you remember your both first reactions when reading the script?
What script?
There wasn't any?
Well, I shoot in chronologically order, which means that the running joke is always, what script are we shooting? Because every day I would just change things. It's a bit like painting. And thank God Netflix, which were the studio behind the show, was very supportive. And the deal was, as long as I remember telling them what I was going to make, they were fine with it. So that was also what's exciting, is that you come to work, even though there's obviously a script that the crew has worked on. It's how do you mutate it into what the show is becoming in front of your eyes.
Every time a filmmaker who's sort of found his or her fan base comes out with something that seems very big and completely their vision and no holding back, there's like a tiny little Christmas on the internet. People are going crazy, and I went on Letterboxd to see what people were saying about this series, and I'm quoting, basically Agnes Varda kicking ass in heaven, says a user called Alberto. Did you see the trailer? This is going to be Twin Peaks: The Return on crack, says Bullhorn Jr. I haven't been this excited for something in a while, says Manuel. I was just curious, how are you with like fan expectations? Do you think about that at all, or do you only try to create the films or pieces that you would want to see yourself?
Well, you can only be the fan of one, really. I mean, if you create something from the heart, then that automatically speaks to a global audience. Whether they like it or not is kind of indifference, because it can never be taken away from you from being honest. And honesty is one of the few things we have left to actually project. If you create with the heart, you can never go wrong. Do I think about the people that I associate with and likes what I do and likes what I make the same way that I like to watch? I think it's better to let me do what I do and let them react to it the way they want to see it. And it's kind of theirs in a way. Once I'm done with anything I do, it kind of, it's like an exorcism. It's just, it leaves your body and it becomes more of a content that is for everyone else to dissect and destroy or love and worship or hate. And the most important thing is just having a reaction, because, you know, time, which is what we live on, is such an essential piece of our being, and time is so sensitive because you'll never get it back. And if you think about how much wasted time you go through your life, it's in a way very sad, including myself, when I think about it. So I always think there's a responsibility from a creator to an audience that if you ask for their time, give something in exchange that's not just, you know, fast food. Give it something that has substance, because at least that's something you will carry with the rest of your life. And that's what art can do. Art can change the universe. It's one of the essential things that, you know, makes us exist. And, you know, that's at least my opinion.
There seems to be a lot going on in this series, and as I understand, this project sort of evolved between genres as you were making it, from sci-fi to superhero to horror, neo-western, and depending on sort of your mood in the morning. I know you were stuck in Copenhagen during the pandemic. Did you find that period to be a particularly creative period for you? How was that?
Well, I mean, we're all affected by the pandemic in a very severe way. We had moved back, or were staying back in Europe or in Denmark because of the pandemic, because America fucking sucks. And so, you know, once you're gone to the country and lived with your family enough, and you've been yelled at enough by your kids, you start to figure out, I need to do something creative or I'm going to go crazy. And so the kind of idea of saying, well, I'm back in Denmark, why don't I do something here? I mean, I've worked so many other places. And so I kind of just began to think, well, when I was last here, I completed the Pusher trilogy. What if I extended that evolution into something else, but made it into something else, and looked at the world in a more global sense, and looking at Denmark and as a global content. So all those kind of ideas started bouncing around in my mind, and then this notion that I really enjoyed working with Elle Fanning on a movie called The Neon Demon, and so I felt it would be great if I could turn this very masculine silent hero from my 3 other movies to now becoming a female. And so I went out and I hired some wonderful female writers to help kind of craft it, because 6 hours is a lot of television. And because we only had 5 months to write it, and obviously knowing that it was going to be changing so much, you needed a great support team around you. So it was an incredible fast turnaround. We wrote it in 5 months, and in that 5 months we started prep. I shot for 8 months, and then 2 months after we premiered at Venice. So it was one of the fastest turnarounds in a creative experience, which was wonderful because you just go from the gut, really. And Netflix was just a very, very creative and supportive partner, and I have nothing, I know it sounds strange, nothing but good things to say about them.
As much as I enjoy asking questions, I think it's only fair that the people who are going to be spending 5 hours in here, and they're here for you guys, to ask some questions as well. Maybe we have some those. And I think if you ask a question, could you stand up, because it's hard for people to hear.
This is a completely unrelated question to this, because we haven't seen it yet, but what happened to your Reagan project with Michael Richards?
Reagan?
Yeah, there was some project connected to you with Michael Richards attached to it.
Who's Michael Richards?
He plays Kramer in Seinfeld.
Oh, I have no idea. I mean, I grew up under Reagan, but I don't think I'm going to make a movie about Reagan.
All right.
Please stand up, it's easier to hear.
Did you have any Well, I can ask all of you because I think that this is relevant for both, directing and acting. Did you use any materials as, let's say, inspiration, or just to get in a mood while shooting or while writing or directing, or however you did? Were you inspired by any other works in general at all?
I played a lot of music on set, and that became a big factor because the music would alternate between the emotions, and it was it was something that I actually started. There's a wonderful American actress called Jenna Malone, I did a shot of her in the Neon Demon, and I played 4 different pieces of music, and I got 4 different reactions. And I found that was very interesting. What if I practiced that through an entire show, where music became like the core of inspiration? So we would play music up until right before action, and then sometimes during the scene I would fade up music and fade it out so the actors could relate to it and react, obviously, because I took all the dialogue away.
In the back.
Do you storyboard or use a previs before going on set?
I use small stickmen. Unfortunately, I'm not very good at drawing, so I come in and when you do produce, especially shows, and in our situation, we didn't have a lot of time, even though we shot for 8 months. So it's very much like, I don't know if you've ever seen a wonderful film called All That Jazz, where Roy Scheidt in the morning showers, gets ready, and then that's like every single day, and you just come on set and you go, okay, let's put the camera there. And then you very quickly decide what you're going to do, and then you take a piece of paper and you do some stickmen and a point of view, and you say, okay, go, 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 go. And that's the 8 hours of the day.
Often in your works are featured like a criminal world or otherwise kind of dangerous people. What about like the criminal world or the dangerous people that kind of is like attracts you as like a story element?
Well, I mean, danger is exciting. Danger is drama. And the darker the drama, the more exciting the drama is. Shakespeare would write about the royal family, not because they were, particularly exciting, but because it was dangerous. And so I've always liked things that were uncomfortable. And I like characters in desperate situation reacting desperate measures, because it's a kind of counter mirror of our society. It's our fantasies, It's what we at night work kind of imagine ourselves to coexist in, but we don't, because thank God we have normal lives. So what fiction can do is that it can transport your emotions into a higher state. It's like, it's the same thing pornography does, is that you live out your fantasies through danger.
Don't be shy.
Hi. Now, when we have like a streaming war, do you feel that directors have more freedom to do the stuff like you have done here for Netflix, or do you feel that they are like the financier are what's that? Gives you less freedom if you follow me?
Well, power is something you take. No one's ever going to give you, like, oh, great, do whatever you want. Like, that doesn't work. It's something you take. So it's a lot of manipulation game. Is there more freedom today than there was before? Yes and no. Obviously, I didn't live through a certain era that was very romantic, like the 70s. But I will say I've always fought for creative control and will continue to do so, because if you don't have creative control, then you are dead in the water. The streaming wars is interesting because there's right now 200 streamers globally that produce content 24 hours a day. So there's an enormous amount of money in the market to create content. Certain companies, like, if you work for Walt Disney and things like that, it's very micromanaged to every single detail. And, if you're into that, great. And then you have places like Netflix, which kind of invented the whole streaming concept, which in my case were very, you know, they were very open to what it could become. Also, obviously, you know, hesitant to a certain extent, but there was a kind of, well, we got to go with the flow and take it from there, and we were very lucky. But we are so dependent on these streamers no matter what. You know, if you make an independent film nowadays, getting that produced is so difficult, and financially it's so challenging. And yet you still end up on a streaming service because an independent distributor needs to either sell to Amazon or Netflix. And so it's like you end up with the same bargain. It's just how you go about doing it. And power is just, you just have to remember the director's job is to take control and force their vision upon everyone else. I think it's better to do it with love and compassion. Some people like screaming. You know, whatever works for you.
I think we have time for one more. There's
This question is for the actors. Is there any significant differences or similarities between the actors you play and who you are as people in real life that maybe made it interesting to play your characters or maybe made it challenging?
You know, my character Raquel has a temper, and I do too. So I think that's something that I could relate to, whether it comes from being annoyed with my family or something else. But I definitely think that's something that you could bring out in her and just wait till the end, because that's where I am. So you'll see.
Yeah, I think also maybe some like pain and aggression that you want to get out, and that you also feel as a female. I can really relate to. But the moves, just for that, for the screen, like the powers, something maybe we more like meditated us into, or like really historically put into it. I wish I had those telepathy and those powers.
Nicolas, Angela, and Lola, it's been a pleasure talking to you and having you here in Stockholm. Is there anything final you want to say to the audience before we turn down the lights?
Good luck.
Thank you so much for coming.
Enjoy.